Excuse me, brother, but the first thing Hacksaw Jim Duggan has to do is give a big ho! Kind of fires me up, gets the blood flowing through the heart, gets the air in the lungs, gets Hacksaw Duggan ready to roll. Now ask your questions, tough guy. Well, the gimmick I use, you know, when I first started professional wrestling, there was a lot of fancy Dan guys out there with feathered boas and sequin robes. Nothing fancy Dan about Hacksaw Jim Duggan, just a 2x4 and the flag of the United States of America. Kind of a working man's hero type of deal. Of course, one thing about Hacksaw, I never worried about winning the match, long as I won the fight. But when I was wrestling, I was WCW television champion, the only undefeated television champion in history. I was king of the ring in WWF. I was North American heavyweight champion in UWF. But I tell you what, I don't worry about them fancy damn belts. The only thing that matters to Hacksaw Jim Duggan is I win the fight. Tough guy. Ho! I can't help it. Sometimes I just got a hole. But two of my biggest injuries in professional wrestling was once down at the Sam Houston Coliseum in Houston, Texas, when the one-man gang ran me into the ring post and a bolt went into my head. Cracked my skull. It was a debilitating injury and almost put me out of wrestling completely. But the injury that caused me the most problem and kept me out of wrestling longer than anything was a ruptured Achilles tendon. And that was about a 6-month injury. Oh, question about it. There's one match that stands out in my mind and stands out in the mind of all the fans of Hacksaw Jim Duggan. That was Andre the Giant. There's only one man in the history of professional wrestling that knocked out Andre the Giant, and that's Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Tough guy, and that's what the fans remember. One of my favorite stories on the road is with my good friend Jake the Snake Roberts. We were driving down the road in a big rented Lincoln one day, running late for our show as usual. We're doing about 80 miles an hour. And wherever Jake went, he carried Damien, a 110-pound python snake. He kept the snake in a big duffel bag, and we'd always throw it in the back seat of the car. Well, the snake would always push against the bag, trying to get out. And one day we got out of the bag, so I'm driving down the road. I look in the mirror. There's this big, huge snake head behind me. So I slam on the brakes, we slide off the road, pull in a little gas station, and there's two old-timers sitting there rocking in their chair. And we jump out of the car, open the back door, start wrestling with this 110-pound snake, stuff it back in the bag, throw it in the trunk, and drive off. So you know, to this day, those guys gotta be going, what in the world was that all about? Well, I tell a lot of folks, a lot of people come up to me and say, Hacksaw, you know, of course, they're 6'3", 6'5", 300 pounds, 24 years old. I want to be a pro wrestler. But folks, you out there got to understand, there's 1,500 NFL football players. There's 1,000 NBA basketball players. There's 100 pro wrestlers on contract this year. It's television. It's actually more competitive than sports. So what I tell kids when they say they want to be a pro wrestler, I say, hey, play golf. It's easier on the body, and it's more money. Ho! For. They try to put me out to pasture. They put old Hacksaw in a rocking chair on the front porch, and I sit there rocking away. But that's not Hacksaw Jim Duggan. So I work a few independent shows. I do some overseas shows, and I'm looking for a new company to start up in this country that will be a little more family-friendly, without all the obscene gestures and profanity. So folks, keep an eye open for the new wrestling federation coming out soon. Look into the camera and pretend that I'm taking on some punk kid in a wrestling match. It's my favorite deal. Because, you know, now, when they got these wrestling promoters that dress kids up and give them a wrestling name and say, hey, you're a pro wrestler. And they come out and they go, well, I'm going to go out to the ring and I'm going to do the best job I can, and I hope I win. Well, that's not Hacksaw Jim Duggan's way. The way I do it is I put my grade A hams on my hip, I stomp on down to the ring, I listen for the bell, and then I do what Hacksaw Jim Duggan does best. Beat people up. So I'm not some punk kid standing down in the convenience store with my hands in my pockets going, ooh, he's a big wrestling star. I'm 6'3", 275 pounds. And if one of you punk kids want to come down and take on Hacksaw Jim Duggan, I'm not a hard man to find. And so like the game show host says, Come on down, tough guy.